In this video, we will learn about test-driven development and how to write a new feature using TDD. Hey everyone, my name is Michaela Karen. I am a full-time iOS developer and freelancer. Let's get started learning about TDD. So what is TDD? It is called test-driven development. So that means our tests drive our development, meaning we write the test before we actually write our feature code. Some of the advantages of TDD is that you only write the code that is needed, because we only write the code that we need to get our test to pass. Our code is then easier to maintain because our tests cover what the functionality is supposed to do, so when we end up refactoring something, we know our tests must pass. If they don't, that means we broke something. So this helps us with what is called regressions, which is when you inadvertently change something that you didn't mean to because you were changing one part of functionality, but something else broke. Our tests also end up documenting our code because the tests tell you what the code should or should not be doing. So when you can look at the test, you can then see what is the code supposed to do. And lastly, we have a higher test coverage because we are writing our tests before writing the code. What we will be doing is following what is called red-green refactor. So red means that our tests fail and they don't pass. Green means we write enough code to make our tests pass. And then refactor is we clean up the code and write it better. So I'll show you what that is now. So the first step is writing our tests. What we are going to do is create a new unit test case. So we go here, click Command N, and let's do a new unit test case class. And let's call this add update song tests. And we'll save it there and hit enter. And there we go. So the first time we did this, we tested our song list view model. So now we are going to test the add update song view model. So maybe let's rename this, or no. Yeah, let's rename this. Let's do refactor. So right click it, refactor, rename. And when you click the little plus here, that makes sure to also rename the comment. Let's say add update song view model tests, because we are specifically testing the view model, not the view. And then you'll see here the file name is going to be changing as well. So we hit enter, and then like this little Swift icon like disappears because it like loses what happens. So I just click Command W and close it, and then click on it and open it again, and then see the icon is like not dimmed anymore. So Xcode like kind of knows what's happening. So again, let's go through and delete everything. And instead write our own setup and our own teardown. So we want to do the calling each test method. Yeah, that one. So it's not the one that says the word class somewhere here. And let's just type super.setup and do the same with teardown. So yeah, clean up after each test method, not the test case. That one, let's do super.teardown. And what we are going to be testing is the add update song view model. Let's call it. So other times you'll see sometimes is what's called SUT. So that's called system under test. We could call this that, but not that one. It's add update. We could call this like this, but it's kind of not clear sometimes. It's the class name does make it more clear, but it goes back and forth if you want to call it this or not. It's usually dependent on whatever your company says, what you should call everything. So I would say follow whatever your company says. If you're just doing this on your own, do whatever is most clear to you. So I like add update song VM. So we were using the add update song view model, and we will force unwrap that so we don't have to declare an initializer. And again, we clicked Command B, and that means build the project of our app target, not our test target. So if we click Command U, the build fails because we tried to run our test target, and this doesn't build because when we click on it, it says it can't find it in the scope. And it still says we don't have initializers. But it can't find it in scope because we haven't added that @testable import. So our last one up at the top, we have @testable import, and then this is our project name. So we will do the same thing over here. And we should get this, and then this actually needs to be a variable, not a initializer. So if we instead click the little diamond to run it, everything runs and test succeeds because we don't even have a test in there. We are going to be testing our add update song view model, and let's set up what we have in the setup like last time over here is we declare a new instance of it, because here we're just saying this is the type, but we want to actually test, we need to actually set it to a value. So let's do add update song VM equals add update song view model with a new instance, and you can see it takes in an HTTP client, and instead of using the real one, again, we want to use the mock one. This allows us to use our mock HTTP client, so we are testing our own code, not going and testing the network, the internet. So let's do that, and then also in the teardown, we will do add update. Do I need to put it before? Okay. I did that in the last one too. No, I did it the other way around. Okay, autocomplete just kind of didn't want to work. Let's put it back in that order. So there we go. What we are going to be testing, because I haven't actually said, is we are going to make sure that we cannot add a blank song. Because right now, if we were to go to the add song, so let's click Command R and actually run the app. We run the app, and when we go to add a new song by clicking the plus button, we can click add song, and we can add a blank row right now. We don't want that to happen. Typically, you'll go through some kind of validation if you want it in a specific format. We are only doing strings, so it's not super important, but we don't want to add an empty string. So let's go ahead and delete that from here, but that's what we're trying to prevent, and we're adding that feature using TDD, so we are writing our test first. So this is the red part, because we're going to write a test right now that fails. Let's stop the project and add update song test. Let's do func test no empty song can be added. Let's do it like that so it's very clear of what this is testing. And we want to test, we want to assert, xct assert, whoops, true, that add update song VM dot is valid, whoops, song is true, because we want to make sure that our song is always true. And then we can also add a message after here, so I don't think we did that in the last one, but this would be like your message for more context, meaning we cannot, or this is more context to what this test is saying, because if this just said xct assert true, and it's like, okay, assert true that is valid song. If this just said is valid, it's kind of confusing, like what is valid? So in your description here, which is part of, if you command click on this and then click show quick help, this is part of this message, and it says that an optional description of a failure. So this would say like, the song must be valid. And it could be written like this. So if we run our test, the build fails. Well, it's failed because is valid song does not exist yet, which is correct because we've written our test, but our actual code has not been written. So let's go to add update song view model, and let's make a new function. Func is valid song, and this will return a Boolean. And right now, let's just return false because we haven't written anything yet. So let's go back to our test and run our test. So the build succeeded because all the code is valid, but we have a test failed. And then you can see when you click on that, it says xct assert true failed, and then it gives us this message of the song must be valid, which gives you more context about what this test is actually asserting, what it's trying to say. And this is correct. We are in the red part, meaning we have written the test, so this is what will happen in the end, but we actually haven't provided the code to make this functionality work. Let's go into that part, which would be the green of we make our test pass. So let's actually write our function. So we want to make sure that our song title is not empty before we actually go about adding it. So we're just writing the function part right here. So we have song title declared way up at the top here as a published variable, and it's just a normal string. So we want to say if song title equals empty. So if it is empty, we return false, because that means it's not valid. Else, if the song is not empty, we want to return true, because this would mean our song is valid and there's real characters here. So let's go ahead and erase that and just write this much. So if we go back to our test, let's go back and run it. And our tests still fail because the isValid song is returning false because we have not set the song title equal to something. So if we then add update song view model dot song title, and we change this to Lalisa, because that's another one of the songs of the band that I have been using. If we change our test sort of now, and we run it, there we go, we got a green, because this meant that this is our setup, that we are giving our song a title, so this sort of simulates as if we were typing it, and then we go ahead and assert that this is a valid song, and this returned true because that it meant over here our song title was not empty, so it returned true. And our test checks that it is true. Okay, so that would be the red-green refactor. So we've done the red of we wrote a failing test. We now just did the green of we made our test pass, but let's do a refactor, meaning write this in a different way. We know that our code will not break because we have written a test for this. So let's go ahead and change this to use a ternary operator. So if we type songtitle.isEmpty, and let's also trim the whitespace characters while we do this. So if we do songtitle, trimming characters, whitespace new lines, is empty. Oops, false, and then true. If I take that off, so this one line is doing the same thing that this one is doing. So we did add something here of trimming any whitespace. So if we were to go to the app, click the plus, and we typed a bunch of spaces, then this would actually fail. So we can test that as well by commenting this out. So it's still all the old stuff, and if we went into here and changed that to look like this, and let me close that, but if we did this, so it's a bunch of spaces, and ran our test, whoops, not the breakpoint. We ran our test succeeds. But this is still blank to us. So let's go back and change that back to Lalisa, and then over here, comment this back in of song title. We are trimming all of whitespace and new lines, and then based on what comes out of that, then we're checking if it is empty, which is the same thing as what's happening here. And then we do the same thing. If this was empty, that means it's not valid, so we return false. And if it is empty, if it is not empty, we return true. So it looks more confusing, but we know that our logic will be okay because we have a test that's covering this. So if we go ahead and comment all of this out with command and then slash, then that should be, yep, it builds, because you don't need the return keyword here because it's technically, if you don't count the comments, it's the only line in the function. So let's go back to here and run our test. And we have test succeeded, so we know it works, but we can also check as well. We can even write a new test so we can check everything at once as opposed to keep changing one test, because that doesn't really make sense. Let's do func test, whitespace song fails. So if we do add update song vm dot song title is equal to, let's do a bunch of spaces. And when we run validate song, we want it to fail. So we can use xct assert false and do add update song vm dot is valid song. And our message could be the song should not be valid. So this should, the test should pass, and the assert is saying is valid song should be false. So we can go ahead and run both of these. And there we go, both of our tests pass. And it passes with, if we fill nothing in, or sorry, if it passes when we fill something in, or when we don't fill anything in and just use spaces. So let's go ahead and delete our commented code here. And we just have that one line as the function. And we have really done TDD, test-driven development, because we've added something new to our application of that function of isValidSong. We've added it, and it is covered completely in code coverage, and it's covered by all of our unit tests. And there we go. That was TDD. We were able to add a new function called isValidSong, and it's completely covered in our unit tests with two different scenarios. We have run through what is TDD, test-driven development, where we write our tests before writing our feature code. We use the red, green, refactor methodology, and we know that our new function isValidSong will always work the way that we've tested so far. So we've tested isValidSong with two different scenarios of where we are saying what the song is with the title, filling it in, and if we just use white spaces. So we know for a fact it works under those two cases, and we've covered both of those in tests. So if we were to ever go back and change our function, we know that our test must pass and our function will always perform that exact same way.